From the streets of Mount Vernon to the golden stages of Hollywood, this is the story of a man who turned pain into purpose and silence into strength. His name is Denzel Washington, actor, director, producer, mentor, and one of the few who managed to rise above the noise without ever losing his soul. Before the Oscars, before the fame, there was a boy from a broken home. His parents' marriage fell apart when he was 14. The world told him what he couldn't be, but faith told him what he could. That faith became his foundation. His discipline became his armor. And his compassion, that became his greatest gift. Over the decades, Denzel would transform every role he touched, from glory to training day, from soldier to sinner, preacher to king. He didn't just play men, he became them. Every line, every look, every silence carried weight, the kind that only comes from living through struggle and finding grace on the other side. He's won awards, built a fortune of over $300 million, and earned respect that no amount of fame can buy. But Denzel's legacy isn't written in trophies. It's written in how he carries himself. Grounded, faithful, unshaken. Because in a world built on temptation and ego, he chose principle. In a town that rewards noise, he found power in humility. So what makes a man hold on to his integrity when everything around him tries to take it away? To understand Denzel Washington today, we have to go back to Mount Vernon, where everything began with a broken home. Mount Vernon, New York, a small working-class town just outside the noise of Manhattan. It's where Denzel Hayes Washington Jr. learned what struggle looked like and what strength truly meant. His mother, Lennis, ran a small beauty salon on the corner. She was the heart of the neighborhood, always smiling, always moving, always believing. Every dollar she earned came from long hours and tired hands. But she never complained. She'd tell young Denzel, "You can pray all you want, but God helps those who help themselves." And he listened. His father, Denzel Sr., was a Pentecostal minister, a tall, quiet, disciplined. He carried the Bible in one hand and an unshakable sense of right and wrong in the other. He didn't say much, but when he did, it stayed with you. His love came through lessons, not hugs. He taught his son to stand straight, speak the truth, and walk by faith, not by sight. But faith gets tested. In 1968, when Denzel was 14, his parents' marriage fell apart. The home that once felt full of music and Sunday mornings grew silent. His father moved out. His mother carried the weight of the world and still smiled through it. For a young boy, it felt like everything safe had vanished. Looking back, Denzel often said that was the moment he learned what resilience meant. That even in heartbreak, you could still find purpose. The pain didn't destroy him, it shaped him. It forced him to grow up, to think, to believe that he could rise above whatever tried to break him. From his mother, he learned compassion. From his father, conviction. From their absence to where he learned independence. That broken home didn't define him. It built him. It taught him that faith isn't about having everything go right. It's about standing tall when everything falls apart. And from that silence, a fire was born, a hunger to rise, to learn, and to become something greater. After his parents split, the world around young Denzel started to unravel. Mount Vernon was no longer just home. It was a trap waiting to close. The streets were filled with noise, temptation, and the kind of trouble that swallowed boys whole. At 14, Denzel was drifting. He started hanging with the wrong crowd. Older kids, fast talkers, kids who didn't care about tomorrow. His mother, Lennis, saw it before he did. She watched the spark in her son's eyes start to fade, replaced by anger and confusion. And one day she made a decision that would change everything. She sent him away to Oakland Military Academy, to Denzel. It felt like punishment. One minute he was running free. The next he was surrounded by uniforms, rules, and early morning drills of all. He hated it at first, the shouting, the structure, the silence. But what felt like exile soon became his salvation. At Oakland, Denzel learned what discipline really meant. It wasn't just about marching or making your bed. It was about mastering yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions. The instructors didn't care who your parents were or what you thought you deserved. They cared about how you carried yourself when no one was watching. And somewhere in that rigid world, Denzel began to understand something powerful, that silence can be strength. He started to listen more, observe more, move with intention. He found comfort in stillness, dignity in humility, and pride in control. Years later, he would look back and call that experience the turning point of his life. The moment his mother's tough love saved him from a road he might never have returned from. That place didn't just straighten his posture, it shaped his spirit. The discipline he learned there became the backbone of his faith, his work, and his future. After Oakland, Denzel had discipline, but discipline doesn't pay tuition. When he entered Fordham University in New York, he stepped into a new kind of battlefield, one fought not with fists or fury, but with hunger, exhaustion, and the cold. He didn't have much. His mother could only help so far, and the rest was up to him. So he worked, any job he could find, cleaning dorms, mopping floors, delivering newspapers at dawn while the city was still half asleep. Sometimes he skipped meals to make rent. Sometimes he studied by the light of a hallway bulb after everyone else had gone to bed. Winters were the hardest. The New York wind cut through cheap coats like knives, and there were nights he could see his breath in his tiny room. But he kept going, one day at a time, one prayer at a time. Faith was all he had, but somehow it was enough. He'd talk to himself, whispering small promises into the dark. You are not staying here forever. You're going somewhere. He didn't know where yet, only that the fire inside him refused to die. Every menial job, every sleepless night became a quiet lesson in humility, in patience, in perseverance. Those hard years at Fordham didn't just test him, they forged him. By the time he walked across that campus, Denzel Washington wasn't just a young man with a degree. He was a survivor, built from faith, sweat, and the certainty that greatness is born in struggle. Those hard years built his endurance, but destiny was already waiting, about to pull him toward the stage. Sometimes destiny doesn't knock, it whispers. For Denzel Washington, that whisper came in the summer of 1975 at a YMCA camp where he worked as a counselor. Life back then was still hard. No money, no clear direction, just long days of watching over kids and wondering what came next. One night, the camp held a talent show. Someone pushed Denzel onto the stage, half as a joke. He didn't have an act prepared, no script, no plan, so he improvised. He made people laugh, told a story, moved with rhythm and confidence he didn't even know he had. And when it was over, the crowd stood up and cheered. Afterward, a woman came up to him and said words that would change everything. You should be an actor. Denzel didn't know it then, but that single moment, that single sentence, lit a fire that's never gone out. He went back to Fordham University and switched his major from journalism to drama. It wasn't the safe choice, but it was the right one. He started studying the craft. Shakespeare, movement, voice, pouring every ounce of himself into something that finally felt real. In 1970, he graduated and earned a scholarship to the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. The nights were long, the apartments were cold, and the dreams felt too big. But Denzel kept going. He knew he wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing purpose. Every line, every rehearsal, every quiet night of doubt brought him closer to who he was meant to be. From that moment on, the stage became his sanctuary, and destiny finally had a name. Passion had given Denzel direction, but the road to the screen was paved with rejection. After his time at the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, Denzel made a choice that surprised many. He left after just 1 year. It wasn't out of failure or frustration. It was conviction. He once said, "I wanted to work, not just study work." He was tired of rehearsing life inside classrooms. He wanted to live it. Money was tight, and the idea of paying rent while memorizing lines in theory no longer made sense. So he packed his bags, armed with little more than faith and hunger, and went looking for a stage that would test him for real. Hollywood wasn't waiting. It never does. Denzel started small, smaller than small. His first break came in 1967 when he landed a role in the TV movie Wilma. It was brief, but for him, it was proof. Proof that someone, somewhere, believed he had something worth watching. But after that first glimpse of light came years of darkness. Audition after audition ended in rejection. Casting directors said he wasn't the right fit. Producers couldn't see past his serious eyes and quiet confidence. He slept on friends' couches, skipped meals, and lived with uncertainty as his only roommate. Still, he refused to give up. Denzel approached every no as if it were training, another rep in the gym of perseverance. Each failure became a lesson in humility, patience, and faith. He reminded himself daily, rejection isn't failure, it's redirection. Then, in 1982, after 5 years of grinding in silence, he landed a role that would change everything. Dr. Philip Chandler in NBC's medical drama, St. Elsewhere. The series became a hit, and Denzel became its quiet center of gravity, powerful without shouting, magnetic without trying. For 6 seasons, he carried himself not as a newcomer, but as a man who had earned his place. That show didn't just open doors, it built them. Denzel Washington had finally found the platform he'd been praying for, but it wasn't luck. It was discipline, persistence, and the courage to walk away from comfort in pursuit of truth. Passion had led him here, but perseverance would keep him climbing, toward the moment the world would finally take notice. In 1980, he took on the role of Private Trip in Glory, a runaway slave turned Union soldier. It was raw, painful, and full of truth. There's a scene where Trip, stripped and whipped, stares straight ahead with silent defiance, a tear rolling down his face but not breaking his pride. That moment earned him his first Academy Award. But more than that, it cemented his reputation as an actor who didn't just play history, he embodied it. Then came Malcolm X in 1992, a role that would define a generation. Directed by Spike Lee, the film was more than a performance, it was a resurrection. For nearly 3 hours, Denzel didn't just portray Malcolm, he was Malcolm. His cadence, his power, his transformation, it was so authentic that even people who knew the real man said, "That's him." Years later, in 2001, he flipped the script completely with Training Day. As Detective Alonzo Harris, he showed the darkness of charisma, the seduction of corruption, the thin line between power and poison. The role won him his second Oscar, this time for Best Actor, proving he could command both righteousness and ruin with equal force. But what made Denzel different wasn't the trophies. It was the choices. In a world that rewards compromise, he refused to play characters that betrayed his principles. When scripts offered money but lacked meaning, he walked away. When the industry tried to fit him into stereotypes, he rewrote the narrative. He often sought advice from Sidney Poitier, his mentor and moral compass. Sidney once told him, "Choose roles that show people what we can be, not what they expect us to be." And Denzel lived by that. Every character he played, soldier, preacher, cop, kingy, carried dignity, discipline, and truth. He never chased the spotlight. He chased purpose. Because to Denzel Washington, acting wasn't about pretending, it was about revealing. But behind the spotlight and the trophies, his journey wasn't without loss. The weight of purpose always comes with a price. While his career soared, Denzel found another source of strength: love. He first met Pauletta Pearson in 1970 on the set of Wilma, the very same film that marked his acting debut. He was young, buzzy, ambitious, still trying to find his place in the world. She was elegant, intelligent, and grounded, a woman of quiet confidence. At first, they were just colleagues, but something about her calm presence stayed with him. In a world full of noise, Pauletta was peace. Years later, their paths crossed again, and this time, Denzel didn't let her slip away. He asked her out more than once. In fact, he likes to joke that she turned him down twice before finally saying yes. They fell in love not in the spotlight, but in the stillness between auditions, long phone calls, and shared prayers. In 1983, they married, long before the awards, before the fame, before the world knew his name. And as his career exploded, Pauletta became the quiet anchor holding everything together. She raised their 4 children, John David, Katia, Malcolm, and Olivia, while Denzel traveled the world filming movies. She kept the family's faith strong, the home warm, and the chaos outside. Fame tests marriages, temptation follows success. But Denzel often said, "The difference between me and most actors, I go home." Because home wasn't a place, it was Pauletta. There were arguments, struggles, and moments when the weight of 2 careers nearly broke them, but their foundation was built on something Hollywood can't buy: faith, patience, and forgiveness. After decades together, Denzel still calls her his greatest blessing. He once said, "I wouldn't be who I am without Pauletta." Through her strength, he learned that real love isn't about perfection, it's about grace. But even love couldn't hide the pain that lived quietly in his past. In 1991, while filming Malcolm X, Denzel received the news. His father, Reverend Denzel Washington Sr., had passed away. It was sudden. There was no final conversation, no goodbye, just silence. Their relationship had always been distant. His father was a man of faith, structure, and few words. He wasn't cruel, just quiet. He provided, he preached, he worked. But affection, that wasn't his language. Growing up, Denzel never truly understood the man who raised him. And by the time he wanted to, it was too late. On set, surrounded by cameras and noise, Denzel carried that loss in silence. In one scene, when Malcolm X stands before a crowd, his voice strong but his eyes heavy with pain. That was real. Behind the character there was a son mourning his father, trying to understand a love that had never been spoken out loud. For years, Denzel wrestled with that distance. He once admitted, "My father was a good man. I just didn't know it then." Time and faith helped him see what he couldn't before. His father's love wasn't in words or touch. It was an example for him. In every early morning sermon, in every quiet sacrifice, in every lesson about discipline and belief. That realization changed him. The anger faded. The emptiness softened. He learned that forgiveness isn't about erasing pain. It's about transforming it. Through loss, Denzel discovered the quiet power of forgiveness and the peace that comes with understanding. From personal loss, Denzel found light in the sacred connections that would follow. In 1996, he starred alongside Whitney Houston in The Preacher's Wife. At the time, Whitney was the biggest star on the planet, a voice that could fill stadiums and still sound like a prayer. Denzel was already a respected actor, grounded and calm, the kind of man who didn't need noise to be noticed. On screen, they played a preacher's wife and an angel, but off screen, something deeper happened. They became family. Their bond wasn't built on fame, it was built on faith. Between takes, they would talk about mom, about life, about how hard it was to stay true in a world that kept testing you. Denzel saw past the spotlight, past the glamour, and saw a woman trying to hold on to her soul while the world demanded too much. He once said this, "Whitney didn't just sing, she worshiped." And he was right. When she opened her mouth, it wasn't just notes, it was a conversation with heaven. But behind that gift, Denzel also saw her pain, the pressure, the loneliness, the expectations. There were days she'd cry, then wipe her face and walk out to perform like nothing happened. And Denzel would be there, quietly, protectively, reminding her that she was more than her fame, that her worth didn't depend on applause. Their friendship became a refuge, a safe place where they could be honest, laugh, pray, and simply be free. They shared a spiritual bond, not romantic, but profound. Whitney once called Denzel her brother in faith. He called her one of the purest souls I've ever met. When the preacher's wife rapped, they went their separate ways, but the connection never faded. Then, in 2012, Denzel got the call. Whitney was gone, found lifeless in a hotel room, a voice silenced too soon. He didn't speak publicly at first. When he finally did, his words were quiet, trembling with regret. I wish I had told her how proud I was, not just of her voice, but of her heart. That loss hit differently. It wasn't about fame or tragedy. It was about a friendship that taught him the hardest truth, that sometimes we wait too long to say what matters most. Since then, Denzel often reminds others to speak gratitude while they can, to love out loud, because Whitney showed him that love unspoken is love unfinished. And from that lesson, he carried a new purpose, to honor people not when they're gone, but while they're still here. The pain of losing Whitney opened another chapter, one where Denzel became a guide for a rising soul. Years before Black Panther, before the world even knew the name Chadwick Boseman, he was just a student at Howard University, chasing a dream that felt too far away. He was talented, hungry, and broke, the kind of broke that makes you question if the dream is even worth it. One summer, Chadwick got accepted into an acting program at the British American Drama Academy in Oxford. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, but also the kind he couldn't afford. Tuition, travel, living expenses. It might as well have been a world away. Then one day, his professor made a call. A well-known actor, someone who believed in giving back, agreed to cover the cost for a few deserving students. Chadwick didn't know who it was. He just knew he was going to England. Years later, after Black Panther had made him a global icon, Chadwick stood on stage at the American Film Institute's Lifetime Achievement Awards ceremony, honoring Denzel Washington, and in front of a room full of Hollywood legends. He said the words that stopped Denzel cold. There is no Black Panther without Denzel Washington. That night, Denzel smiled, but his eyes told another story. A mix of pride, humility, and awe. Because he realized that one quiet act of generosity decades earlier had echoed through time, shaping a legacy far bigger than himself. In 20, when Chadwick died at just 43 after a private battle with cancer, Denzel was heartbroken. He hadn't known, none of them had. Chadwick had carried his pain with quiet grace, working, inspiring, and giving until the end. Denzel later said softly, he never complained. He just worked, with purpose. That's grace. For Denzel, it was another lesson, a reminder that greatness isn't about what you keep, but what you give. His gift had helped launch a hero, and in return, Chadwick's life reminded him and the world that true strength is measured not by how long you live, but how deeply you touch others while you can. Through Chadwick, Denzel learned that legacy isn't built in the spotlight. It's built in the quiet moments of kindness that outlive us all. But the greatest loss of Denzel's life came from the woman who had shaped every part of it. Her name was Lennis Washington, his mother, his foundation, his first teacher. She was the one who kept him from falling, who sent him to military school when he was heading down the wrong path, and who prayed for him every single day of his life. When she passed away in 2021, the world barely noticed. But Denzel did. He didn't speak much about it. He didn't post or perform his grief. He just said quietly, "My mother was the reason I am who I am." Lennis had been more than a parent. She was his compass. She taught him that discipline is love and faith is strength. She didn't raise him to chase fame. She raised him to chase purpose. When life got noisy, he always came back to her lessons. Pray, work hard, stay humble. After she was gone, Denzel found himself returning to those same rituals, reading the Bible each morning, praying before bed, speaking to God like he was still speaking to her. He often said he could still feel her presence in moments of stillness, that her voice lives somewhere in the back of his mind, reminding him, to whom much is given, much is required. Grief changes you, but for Denzel, it didn't break him. It softened him. It made him more grateful, more patient, more aware of how fragile time really is. Lennis Washington gave her son two gifts, faith and gratitude. One kept him grounded, the other kept him rising. Through her faith, Denzel learned that love never dies. It just changes form. As age arrived, Denzel learned to face his limits, but he never stopped moving forward. At 70 years old, he stands where few ever reach, not just as one of the greatest actors of his time, but as a man who has found peace in the quiet that success can never buy. Decades of fame, awards, and applause have given way to something simpler, gratitude. He's not the same man who once chased perfection. In 2013, a heart procedure reminded him that even heroes have fragile hearts. He took it as a sign, not of weakness, but of grace, a reminder that life is a gift and time is sacred. Since then, Denzel hasn't tried to outrun age. He walks with it, slowly, purposefully, faithfully. These days, he lives quietly in Los Angeles. No red carpets, no endless parties. His joy is found in family, in Pauletta's laughter, in the voices of his children and grandchildren echoing through the house. He still reads the Bible every morning, still gives back to his church, still writes checks to fund scholarships for young artists who remind him of himself, hungry, uncertain, but full of hope. He once said, "I've been blessed. Now my job is to bless others." And that's exactly what he does. Through his foundation work, through mentorship, through the way he carries himself, calm, humble, and unshakably grounded. In 23, he returned to the screen in The Equalizer 3, his final chapter in the franchise. Slower, grayer, but sharper than ever. It wasn't about proving he still could. It was about showing that purpose never retires. Denzel Washington's legacy isn't measured in box office numbers or awards. It's in the way he's lived, with discipline, compassion, and faith. He has become what his mother prayed he'd be, a man of substance, not spectacle. He doesn't fear the end, because he believes this life is just the first act of something eternal. So, what makes Denzel Washington a legend? Let's look back at the journey that defined him. So, what makes Denzel Washington a legend? Let's look back at the journey that defined him. From the broken streets of Mount Vernon to the brightest lights of Hollywood, Denzel Washington's life has never been about luck. It's been about faith, about discipline, about love. He was once a boy caught between silence and chaos, a son of a preacher and a working mother who refused to give up on him. Through heartbreak, rejection, and loss, he learned that greatness isn't given, it's built. One prayer and one choice at a time. He rose from small television roles to Oscar-winning performances, becoming a face the world would never forget. Glory, Malcolm X, Training Day. Each film wasn't just a role, it was a reflection of something deeper. His conviction that art should reveal truth, not hide from it, but beyond the fame and fortune, the $300 million, the awards, the applause. Denzel's real story is spiritual. It's the story of a man who never let success make him forget where he came from or who guided him there. The lessons of his father's strength, his mother's faith, his wife's patience, and his own belief in purpose have carried him through every trial. He's buried friends, mentors, and even the woman who raised him. Yet every loss has deepened his gratitude. Every scar has become a sermon. Every day, he wakes up and chooses service over spotlight, meaning over fame, character over comfort. Denzel Washington's power doesn't come from Hollywood. It comes from within, from the scriptures he reads each morning, from the quiet prayers he whispers before every performance, from his unwavering belief that success without purpose is failure in disguise. He stands as proof that you can walk through fire and not be burned, if faith is your armor and humility your compass. So when we talk about legends, it's not just about who's remembered. It's about who reminds us to believe, to forgive, to keep going. Denzel Washington didn't just conquer Hollywood. He rewrote the meaning of greatness with heart and with faith, with faith, with faith, with faith.